Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Customer Journey Mapping for Marketing Success. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant here at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. So as you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we are going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will try our best to get to all of them. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, BMO, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, BPM, HubSpot for Startups, and Google Cloud. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch just a couple polls, step back and see how everyone in the room is doing today. This first poll is going to ask, how are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? And I'll give it just a couple moments for folks to submit a response here. Thank you all for participating. All right, I'm going to give it one more moment. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. All right, it looks like optimism in the lead. Always love to see that. Definitely have some feelings of surviving and anxiety in the audience as well. I'm super confident our conversation today will be helpful for those feelings. So I'm going to stop sharing this poll and launch that second poll. What is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? And this one just helps us understand your current needs as an entrepreneur so we can ensure we are developing meaningful programming and resources for all of you. Awesome. We got folks from DC, North Carolina, Florida, West Virginia, California, Canada, North Carolina, Virginia, California, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois. Awesome, awesome. New Jersey, Texas, Wisconsin. Welcome, welcome. So great to have you all dialing in here from all over the place. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end this poll. Paris, France, welcome, welcome. All right. Now I'm gonna share these results. All right, it looks like sales coming up in the lead, marketing and finance behind, but all across the board fitting for our conversation today. So thank you so much for participating. I'm gonna stop sharing that poll. And without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to our special guest, Samantha Carroll, CEO and Principal Consultant at Once Upon a Brand. Samantha, it is such a pleasure to have you here with us today. I'm super excited, and I'm going to pass it right over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you, everyone who's here today. I'm so excited to get started. And I am going to just share my screen. It looks like let's see, one sec. How are we looking on your end, Michelle?
Looks great. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So, welcome to Customer Journey Mapping for Marketing Success. I am Samantha Carroll. I'm the CEO and Principal Consultant of Once Upon a Brand, as Michelle so kindly introduced me. And I'm going to start today just by going over some assumptions that I had about why you might be listening to today's webinar. And here are some thoughts. So, things you might be thinking are, what do my clients or customers really think about my business or about my brand? How do I know if my customers are aware of all that I have to offer? How can I do a better job of converting potential clients? What are the brand touch points I need to consider? How can I think about my buyer's journey more effectively than I currently am? And maybe how do I know when to shift my strategies or consider alternate approaches? So I hope that this presentation, and I planned this out to really touch on these ideas. And if there are other questions that we haven't answered in this webinar, please, raise your hand or put it in the chat for the live Q&A, and hopefully we can get to some of that. And Michelle is going to help us with a third poll, which is up here. Thank you so much, Michelle. That basically says, I am most frustrated that I am not getting a high response rate, not generating leads, not attracting the right clients, explaining what I do more often than I would like, or I'm getting a lot of interest, but not a lot of sales. So we'll just take a minute to answer that and see where everyone's at. Michelle, do we have any results yet?
Yes, we do. I'm gonna share.
Great. Okay, so it's actually a bit mixed, which is interesting. So not generating leads, getting a lot of interest, not a lot of sales, not attracting the right clients are kind of in the lead, but really pretty closely followed by the others. So which makes a lot of sense, because a lot of times it's multifactorial in what we're frustrated by, and there's a lot of interconnection there. So that's great. So thank you so much. So before we kind of get into the meat of today's webinar, I wanted you to understand a little bit about my background and about how I have interacted with different audiences as I've built my own career. So when I was in college, actually, I did a summer internship and I worked for the evening news show called Dateline NBC. The project that I was assigned to was the 1 year anniversary aftermath of the shooting at Columbine High School in Colorado. And my job was really to log hours and hours and hours of footage of interviews with different people affected by that, whether they were the families of victims, whether they were friends, whether they were teachers at the school, or different stakeholders. And so a lot of it was trying to understand how to piece together this story by understanding different aspects of the audience and how to construct that story in the best possible way. After coming out of college, I worked for Comedy Central in New York. I worked as part of the production of special stand-up and events programming, and we did things like the Friars Club roasts and 30-minute specials with a lot of comedians that were lesser known then and very well known now, which was a really fun time. And a lot of what we had to do was think about that TV audience's journey from understanding about a show and then working with marketing to let other people know about that show, looking at how advertising impacted the brand awareness for different shows, and then actually piecing together the actual show. And then in the post, how we ended up carrying out the development of that particular programming. When I was in graduate school, I was chosen as the first ever representative for Georgetown University's MBA program at the McDonough School of Business to be a journal series writer for businessweek.com, which was great. And my job was to basically chronicle life as an MBA student. And so I had to understand what kind of audience. A lot of them were prospective MBA students, and understand sort of the demographics and the market of those who came to businessweek.com, what kind of information might be most helpful, and let them into a glimpse of what it was really like. When I came out of graduate school, I went to work for Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a very large consulting company. They do commercial and federal consulting. I was based in DC and worked with very large federal agency clients on large scale communications work. And my job was really gathering and telling stories and helping executive leaders and those within the government to increase brand awareness and understanding of what it was that they did. And in many cases, tell stories that would then impact maybe policy changes or organizational changes or managed changes. So a lot of stakeholder interviewing, a lot of stakeholder analysis, and really diving into the audience for different initiatives. When I left Booz Allen Hamilton, I was the editor at large at The Family Groove, which was an online parenting magazine. And my job there was a very different audience. This was parents, parents to be, family members, and then just the broader community of those interested in parenting articles. And so that was about engaging and educating a community and driving them from awareness to the magazine to potentially engaging in some other way, whether it was to get advertisers or lead someone to purchase a product. And when I left The Family Groove, I created Once Upon a Brand in 2012. And now, most of my work involves insight-driven strategies and creating messages that impact and influence and cause different stakeholders to act in some way. And so some of the things we do are to increase that brand awareness and understanding, creating greater visibility, and really relying on industry best practices and market research, engaging stakeholders in conversations that really address change management initiatives, thinking through, again, that customer journey, designing messages that align with organizational goals or growth goals, directing communication strategy, and then working actually with C-suite leaders and top executives to not only accelerate the organizational growth, but also the executive growth of C-suite or executive leaders' own brand. Here are just a couple of clients that we serve. Most are impact focused and center around healthcare, higher education, advocacy, and technology. And so here's where we get into the fun stuff. So I want to start just by talking a little bit about customer journey mapping and really what it is, just to make sure that we all have the same information moving forward. So customer journey mapping is a process that organizations use to better understand and track all of the ways that customers interact with them. And so the very first step in thinking about the customer journey mapping is really to understand all of the touch points along the journey. When I refer to customers, I'm not just referring to retail customers. What I mean by customers is this could include members, if it's a nonprofit or some other kind of a membership-based organization. It can be volunteers, clients, partners, or really any other stakeholder that makes a decision to engage with your brand. So let's look at what is a touch point. So touch points include all of the interactions that occur between a customer and a brand. So this may include offline interactions, like this woman who's likely at a grocery store with her grocery cart there and thinking about different products to buy. Maybe she's looking at the packaging or how something's worded or a sales price or different communications that are throughout the grocery store. Or we may be talking about digital interactions, and we'll talk more about that in terms of the content as well and how we can sort of optimize that content throughout the customer journey. So there are 5 basic phases of the journey map. Some places you'll see 4 phases because they've rolled up a phase into just having 4. I like to use the model where there's 5 basic phases, and hopefully you'll see why as we keep going along. So the very first phase is awareness. So the purpose really of the awareness phase is really just to introduce your potential customer to your brand. This can be just through social media content you might be putting out about your company or your business. Maybe you've gotten some recent press and someone sees an article, whether it's digital article or an article in a community newspaper or in an industry publication. Maybe you've sponsored an event or sponsored a conference. And so this essentially is introducing for the first time your brand to this new or different audience. And finally, strategic partnerships. So that may be that if there's a newsletter that someone that you know that maybe is in the same industry, maybe they offer something complementary to what you do, and you've decided to form some kind of a strategic partnership, and they introduce your brand in some way, whether it's an interview with you or whether it's just a mention of your company. So strategic partnerships can be a great way to infuse your brand into this kind of first introduction to this newer audience. So types of content that can guide this awareness phase. I put together some ideas that I hope will help you as you think through how you can start to build out this customer journey map. And some of these types of content include blog articles, videos, or even just explainer videos. So maybe on your website, there's some little explainer video that really helps to let people know what it is that you're offering, whether it's a product or a service, but it's walking them through and just making them aware of what you have to offer. Reviews or testimonials can guide awareness too. Sometimes testimonials that have specific content about maybe a service that you've offered or a product somebody may not have been aware that you offered can be really helpful. Ads or promotions. Lead magnets are a great way to guide some awareness as well about the value that you bring. We mentioned social media posts, sometimes search result messaging. So even just, it could be in the description when someone Googles a certain product or even your company, and the messaging can then be tailored to make them aware of what you have to offer. And then, as we mentioned, some press coverage. So those are all different ways, and by no means is this an exclusive list. There are many, many different kinds of content that can guide awareness. But the main point is that this is an opportunity really just to introduce your potential customer or client to your brand. So the next phase of this is really the consideration phase. And in this phase, we're going from an introduction to then wanting to educate the potential customer about your brand. So when we're educating, we want to think about things like your website. Maybe there's social proof out there. Maybe you've amassed a great following, or maybe you've been published, or you were a speaker somewhere, or you have a really wonderful testimonial from someone. And so offering this kind of social proof is part of this education piece to let people know a bit about your credibility and your experience. We want to think a lot about consistent messaging. So when we're educating our audience, we want to think about what kinds of things they need to know in order to move along the process to make a decision about whether they're going to end up engaging with your company or not. And then again, testimonials that we brought up so that they can be very helpful in this education piece as well. So we think about website messaging or a frequently asked questions or a Q&A session is a great way to educate your potential customer about your brand, and do some outreach messaging as well. So if you're doing some email marketing or just even some cold emails, some of this outreach is a great opportunity to include links or even a couple of sentences about new services you might be offering and educating a little bit about the value or providing some statistics or a little testimonial story. The referral process is a great way to educate as well. So if someone's referring someone to your company, that's a great way that they are actually educating a potential customer on what their experience is, how it worked, and then referring someone back to you. So, which is also kind of the word of mouth marketing, right? Social content, newsletters, maybe you're focused on some topics that are going on in an industry that you're involved in, or you want to tie some trend or some market shift to your company. And so that's a great way to educate your customer based on something that might be timely or seasonal, and then provide value to let people know, hey, I can actually help you with this issue. Social groups are a great way. So LinkedIn groups or other social media groups, Facebook groups, where you can show some of that expertise. Brand story messages, PR and podcasts, any kind of conversation where you can infuse some information about what you do or who you work for or who you work with is a great way to educate your potential customers at this point. Presentations and case studies. And again, many more types of content, but this is a great start of a few things to think about when you're thinking through the content that goes along with each of these customer journey phases. So the third phase is the decision. Now, this is not when they make a decision, but rather the phase where they're thinking about deciding and you are sort of helping them along that process. They haven't decided yet, but they're in the process of making that decision. So to that end, the purpose is really to influence your potential customer. And so here it's, what need are you filling for them? You're allowing them to evaluate options. Maybe you have some kind of a capability chart and you're putting all these data points in of all the capabilities. So you're helping them really understand and kind of moving them towards making a decision. A limited time offer or, a free or paid consultation is also a great great activity to add to this decision phase. Podcasts can be also valuable in this phase in more in-depth videos. So not so much of an explainer video, but more an in-depth video that offers social proof or testimonials or even an interview with a client, and then some call to action, some activity you want them to take based on them watching this video. Worksheets or checklists, recommendations, product demos. That's a great activity to offer during this decision phase. And then we're moving. So now they're aware, we've educated them, and they're thinking through things. We're giving them the information they need to make a decision. And then we're at the purchase phase where they've actually made that decision. So in this phase, we are actually converting our potential customer into our actual customer. And here's where we can use really specific newsletter content. We can use follow-up content. So think about, even after they've made a purchase, what kind of information are you giving them? We want to think here about the feedback cycle, how to understand what their experience has been like. And then thinking about how do we call that, the calls to action for the next purchase or what's going to come after this. And so we think about the touch points along the purchase phase of this as being, maybe it's an e-commerce platform, maybe it's invoice or a signed contract or an order confirmation. It's any of that content that's during the purchase phase that winds up with your customer. And so we think about creating a really consistent brand. And we're going to get into how do we really do that during these phases as well. And finally, the loyalty phase. So this is post-purchase. Now we've gotten our potential customer to come on board as an actual customer. Now we want to create a long-term relationship. So we want to think about things like follow-up emails, or maybe we offer a follow-up product or service. We think about the client onboarding or customer onboarding, or even offboarding process, and giving that feedback cycle. And then how do we think about ideas in order to keep those actual customers happy and coming back and engaging us for more? So maybe thinking of you type content. And so sending a note, or through social media, or just a note of gratitude. We think about deals, coupons, and freebies. These are all part of this loyalty phase. We think about our email signature, actually. And so sometimes you may see, someone may put, a referral is the best compliment I can get, or certain messages there that are really telling someone, help me keep going. And just reminders, right? So we get reminders all the time. We get tailored content. Maybe there's something else that particular customer may be interested in. So going back to previous customers and offering some kind of information about something else that might be truly helpful to them. So I wanted to do just a brief example to make this a little bit more real. And so if we think about a quick sample of a patient journey, we think about all of these different phases. So if we're starting with awareness, here's where the patient just first hears about a local medical practice. So maybe someone referred them, maybe they saw an ad somewhere, or happened to Google and something came up. In the consideration phase, that patient would actually call and speak to a receptionist, maybe visit the website to learn more, read a pamphlet, have a conversation with someone at that office. In the decision phase, this is where that consultation comes into play. So maybe they're actually meeting for some kind of a consultation. They're trying to learn more. That doctor is influencing how they think about the care or treatment they might get. And then in the purchase phase for a patient might be that they then decide to move forward with whatever health plan that doctor has laid out. So if it's surgery or if it's going to physical therapy or changing their diet, that's sort of that acceptance of what's going to happen and moving forward or setting up that next appointment. And then in loyalty phase, for a healthcare journey, that might mean receiving a follow-up phone call or information or some other communication or value add from that. If it's a doctor's office or a facility, maybe it's educational information about whatever's going on with that particular patient, or even just in the community that might offer some value. Here's where we want to talk a little bit about brand personas. And I wanted to give really an example again. Now I'm flipping it from patient to a health advocacy executive. So let's say, for example, the brand persona that I want to build out is I really want to understand this health advocacy executive, who this person is, what things are important to them, how are they making decisions, where can I engage with them, where are they spending time online. So this is just a very, very basic example here, but I wanted to give you a couple of ideas. This could absolutely and should absolutely be built out more. But if you were just starting, you might just put some of these down on a piece of paper and think about who the client actually is, maybe their role within the certain company, could be their age, their education level, profession, industry, location. We want to think through what are their values. So with this kind of an individual, they're going to value education, they're going to value equity and potentially social progress, or information that helps people make decisions that's out there about the greater health community. And then we also want to think about what's really their preferred communication type. So it might be email, it might be Zoom, but maybe different people have different preferences based on their abilities or their capabilities or their access to technology or their lack of access to technology. So we want to think about the best ways to communicate with different stakeholders based on what works best for them, not us. And we want to think about their pain points. So maybe this particular pain point includes the need for professional upskilling, or maybe they're trying to manage lots of changes and you can solve that by offering some kind of a service. Maybe their goals. So we want to think about if this particular person's goal was to develop a plan to strengthen communication strategies or prepare for the unexpected, then I know that my response to that is really to provide solutions that can help address those goals. We can think about professional development, and we're going to talk a little bit about diving in even deeper to the market research so that we can understand our stakeholders even better. When we go from a brand persona, which is really a kind of snapshot in time, it's today's profile, right, of our customers, but it's not enough to do a one and done. We want to think about sort of this future state collective mapping, what I'm calling. And then how does AI, how do new technologies come into play with thinking about anticipating changes with our approach or our customer journey? So we want to look at some of the benefits of mapping with your team. So one sort of mistake, I guess I would say that I see from time to time that teams are doing is that they are assigning one individual to think through the customer journey map. And it's really a collective process. And so here are just really just 5 benefits of mapping with your team. There are so many other benefits, but I wanted to go through this because as you're thinking about this, there's a lot of value to think through who are the other people that can help you with this mapping activity. And so the first benefit is that when you map with your team, what you're really doing is you're creating this common understanding of the purpose. So you're sort of level setting for the team and getting everyone on the same page about this. You're then aligning stakeholders around the mission. So whatever mission you have at that point in time that's guiding your customer journey mapping uh, goals or what you hope to get out of it, you're really aligning stakeholders around this whole mission and getting everyone's buy-in. You are able to identify customer needs and values, but across multiple teams. So often, one team or one department in an organization has a really different experience with that end user or that particular stakeholder. And so it's so valuable as an exercise to get everyone involved in this process because always having a more comprehensive idea of a customer's needs and their values, it just makes for a stronger process development. And then it also really helps with finding gaps in customer understanding. So maybe your customer communication is really solid in the awareness and um, maybe the first like 1 or 2 phases that we talked about. But then maybe it kind of gets a little hazy around decision. And so that goes back to our poll. Maybe there's a lot of interest. They want to learn more, but we're not giving them the information or the tools to really help them make that decision and become an actual customer. So when you speak with different team members, it's really valuable to try to identify those gaps. And then the fifth is really just the ability to brainstorm processes to better connect the journey, think about your content in a more comprehensive way. So here is where we're thinking about, are we connecting? How good of a job are we doing? Have we been successful? And so monitoring and measuring that brand recognition, those conversion rates, there are so many different ways to do it. There are so many incredible resources online and tools and platforms that can help us with this data collection. So I'm putting some things that are general just to get your ideas flowing. And then you can think about, well, what are the specific ways I could walk through that. So one way is just focus groups, which could be a really small focus group or a group of, let's say, 5 to 10 stakeholders, a mix of internal and external stakeholders that you might interview and figure out, how did you hear about us? What made you decide? Had you look at competitors? What kind of information might you need to purchase something else from our company? We can look at referral traffic through, back-end analytics on websites. We can also just look at interactions with email. Are you getting a lot of referrals from different word of mouth marketing or people that are strategic partners, and all of a sudden you've gotten all of these referrals, and so you can manage it that way and measure it that way. Maybe there are social mentions, or you see your engagement really take off increases in earned media are always a wonderful thing to see. So if someone is giving you, maybe they're reaching out to include you in an article, or they want a quote from you, or your insight. So any increases in earned media, that's a great way to see if the brand awareness is really increasing. We can look at surveys and polls. We can look at the number of downloads or the number of visits a landing page gets or a website gets, or maybe you have a lead magnet out there and you suddenly start to see some activity there that wasn't there before. And I mentioned, Google Analytics or maybe other data management software, and then social media management apps. Look at the reports there and the analytics there, and whether they have analytics that can help you better understand the awareness or the recognition. We think about current trends and how they might impact future changes. So AI can be a wonderful, wonderful tool in terms of identifying some information that might help us brainstorm. It can help give us some questions to think about during different situations with different prompts that you put in. One thing that I think is great about AI is also the ability to sort of compare past trends or seasonal factors or event cycles through market research. So you might have done a report at one time where you could literally copy and paste that into AI, and really think about asking whatever AI tool you're using to give you some insights into how you might gather information to anticipate changes moving forward. Stakeholder interviews are a great way to think about anticipating changes too, by asking questions to your stakeholders. What might influence your decisions moving forward? Or bring up ideas or things that are going on in the world that may affect that stakeholder's ability to purchase or to engage with your brand. You can use transcription services too, like Otter or other transcription services out there, and then input the transcript from an interview into AI and include some prompt as to, what are some outcomes based on what the stakeholder feedback was. And I included a couple of different, AI tools you can use, from ChatGPT, Claude 3, Grammarly, Gemini. There are so many others. And they all have their little nuances. So you may even try inputting information into a couple of them just to see what those differences are that come back to you. And it's always helpful to put information or data that you have available to you now, and see, can AI actually return some kind of prediction, or, based on, let's say you put data from the last 3 months, can it come up with some trajectory for how this is moving and give you some outcomes there? I know we're a little bit pressed for time, so I'm going to finish up here. We're almost at the end and ready for questions, but I wanted to give you some ideas of how to really create consistent messaging across your brand. And that's really how you develop a strong brand, you impact your brand recognition and develop your brand reputation and build awareness. And so some of these things include creating talking points. So talking points for yourself, talking points for your team, creating the same talking points or similar talking points so that the information your customers are getting stays very consistent and you are avoiding marketplace confusion with either the structure of your company or what you offer. You can think of a tagline. You can use a boilerplate, so sort of an about the company and how you want that company to be known. And so those are some ways that we can continue using the same language, the same brand voice, thinking about that end customer and what their needs are, and how you might need to communicate with that audience. Bylines. So if you're publishing an article or being asked to be an authority for somebody else's article, think about that byline you use so people start to understand and get familiar with who you are. And then the UVP, which is the unique value proposition, that's a great way to just build in that sort of branded content. And then what you're doing is create all of the content you continue to create should really reinforce all of these different content areas. And so when we're tailoring our content to these personas, we want to do a lot of market research. We want to understand through stakeholder interviews or market research online or on LinkedIn or reading industry articles. We want to really dig into what we know about these personas, their preferences, their values, demographics, their psychographics, all of these different aspects that can help our own understanding of the customer needs and their pain points. Thinking about communication preferences, which is what we talked about. And then how do you really personalize these strategies? So we're all familiar with getting emails that have our name at the top, and that companies build that relationship by personalizing. But if we're not a huge global brand, we can still personalize strategies by emailing our clients with really custom suggestions and making it a very personal relationship. And finally, we want to make sure that we're calling them to action. So during all of these different phases, we might use a call to action in the awareness phase, moving them into being educated by learn more. We might want someone to donate now, and that's more of the decision purchase phase. So we want to think really strategically during the customer journey about what do we want the customer to do. Yes, we're putting out information, but we want the customer to take an action. That action might just be to read an article, but that action might also be to submit input or feedback or purchase. And I love this quote from Steve Jobs that says, you've got to start with the customer experience and then work back toward the technology, not the other way around. Because really what he means by this is we have to always be thinking about that end user, not about what we're offering and what we need, but really what our audience needs. And that's thinking about that customer experience. And so building systems for long-term success, we think about continuously using the value of stakeholder insights and really identifying systems that we can monitor and measure and then modify based on changes. So if you remember, that brand persona is a snapshot in time, and we need to be thinking and going back and making sure this is still current or has anything changed. And so we want to always have systems for thinking about that long-term success. I hope you found this information to be really helpful and given you some ideas. I would love to connect. If you would like to go on LinkedIn, you can find me at linkedin.com/company/Once Upon a Brand LLC, or my personal LinkedIn, Instagram. And then I've included the info at onceuponabrandlc.com email if anyone has further questions or is in need of consulting or coaching or would like to have me speak at another event. And with that, I know we're a little cramped for time and I want to make sure we have time for the live Q&A. So Michelle, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Samantha. That was absolutely incredible and just such a great kind of like playbook for really thinking through that process. So yeah, we have a few minutes. Let's try to get through a couple questions
Yeah.
here. We have a couple people, who I think, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the community who are maybe solopreneurs or just starting out, maybe, have kind of like limited capacity. So, can you maybe talk more about just like some of those key considerations, like when
Yes.
you're first starting out?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're first starting out, the best thing to do is that, conceivably you are coming into your startup with some expertise or some passion. And so I think in terms of the content, drawing on that and thinking about the needs of your customers. And so going through these phases, you can definitely bootstrap a lot of this. So with social media, I mean, social media is a great place to start putting posts out there, informing people, trying to provide information. Strategic partnerships are a fantastic way when you're just starting out and you don't have much of a community or much of an audience. So thinking about, do I want to connect with new audiences or do I want to expand my audience by um, hooking up with someone else? So maybe they have a really big email list and they are willing to highlight your product or your service. And so the outreach process can be a great place to let different partners or potential partners understand what you have to offer. And it can be as simple as, would you like to ask me a couple questions? And if you feature me here, this is what I can give in return. We always want to think about this idea of reciprocity. So we never want to ask someone for something because then it's really just a favor. It's not a partnership, right? So we want to think about what can I offer to someone in exchange for, doing something on our behalf. So social media, website, strategic partnerships are all great. And I think like talk, have so many conversations, learn what has worked in your industry, do the research for best practices. Joining associations is also a fantastic way to pick up information and also interact with those who have more experience in that space than you do. And if you're a startup or an entrepreneur, places like NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center are perfect to gather that information and connect with others at different stages of that
Awesome. Yeah, that's super helpful. And I think a lot of it, can really come down to like having the, that confidence and really taking the time
Yeah.
to invest in thinking, those aspects through. So yeah, I think that's super helpful. I think we have time for one more question, and I think this is interesting. This person their buyer is different from their user. So how does that kind of, potentially change how this process works or, just key considerations for those kinds of situations?
Yeah. So, is there an example that this person could give us as to the difference? And while they are providing us maybe that information, if they're willing in the chat, we do want to think about tailoring the customer journey based on the customer. So we might have a really different customer journey for different segments. And so we can think about even let's go back to the healthcare example. So a hospital, right, has a lot of different stakeholders and a lot of different customers. So we want to think about how do we present information that leads a customer from being aware of something that we're offering at the hospital. Maybe it's a new program or maybe it's a new initiative that we're launching. And so providing them the information through that whole journey until they've actually become sort of this loyal customer, right? That might be really different for an end user that's a family, a family member of a patient, versus maybe there's another program that's really geared toward corporate partners. And so we do have to dig into those interviews or focus groups or market research to really make sure that we're understanding the needs. I always go back to what are these pain points? What information do people need to make a decision? Because a lot of times what I see with my own clients is there's missing information, or there are gaps in understanding, or we're providing even conflicting information. And so we're creating this confusion. And so that's sometimes where this bottleneck, happens, where people are excited or they're interested, but then they just don't have the information to get them over that hump. And so that's sort of what we have to think about when there's different audiences there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's super helpful and totally, I think it's applicable to what this person was talking about. So thank you.
good.
This has been so awesome, Samantha. If you just had one key takeaway or piece of wisdom you wanted to leave with the audience, what would that be?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many, but I'm gonna say that I think one of the sort of pitfalls in people's understanding of marketing is that if I do it once, I'm done, or if I create this content, I can just use it forever. And yes, sometimes there's bits that we can do that, but marketing is really an iterative process where we have to think about external changes, we have to think about internal factors. And so how we're interacting with the outside world, we need to create systems to continually make sure that what we're doing is still really focused and still really targeted. And so when it comes to marketing and communication, we want to really think about changes over time and look at those changes over time. And are we being successful? Are we really connecting? Or am I just kind of putting stuff out there and then it's forgotten? And so we never want to do that. And it's really a relationship. It's cultivating a relationship with your audience. And so it should be a really ongoing process to examine and dig into the numbers and the insights continually.
Awesome. Samantha, this has been
Yeah.
incredible. Thank you so much for all of the insight and just providing such a great overview. So, on behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone here today, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And to our audience, we would love for you all to join us again for upcoming webinars, which you can view using those links that are going to be posted in the chat. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.